Hello, hello, coming to you with another Canvas template. This is one of the most favorite templates I've ever created. And first, I want to give credit where credit is due. This activity has been adapted and inspired by, Ron Ritchhart and Mark Church, who wrote The Power of Making Thinking Visible. So the goal with this discussion is for students, number one, for students to be in charge of the discussion. This is student-centered, and for them to create the conversation that's going to be around one key resource, okay? So as you're looking at this discussion right now, I'm in instructor view, and it may look a little different to you. And this is because I have enabled a newer feature in Canvas called discussion redesigns. And I'm going to explain to you why it's important to enable that feature when you are using this template and possibly for the rest of your discussions. So first of all, when you are you want to enable the discussion redesign because you can finally use an @mention tag, which means you can tag other students in a post and they will be notified that they've been added to a post. You can mark a response as read or unread so that you can indicate which responses you've actually read, and students can do that as well. And then you can also subscribe to a discussion forum, which you could do before, but now it's really easy to do just by clicking this little green flag, meaning that every time someone responds or replies to this discussion board, it's going to send you a quick notification letting you know that there's conversation going on. Okay, so now let's talk about this activity and the template I've built. So of course, like I said, it's been inspired by The Power of Making Thinking Visible. It's a certain routine, thinking routine, but I've adapted it in a way that, of course, is going to be used on Canvas, and it can be done fully online or asynchronously, or you can break up the parts and do a little bit in class and a little bit online. So let me go over what students do. In the Leaderless discussion, the activity goal is to have students in charge. So instead of answering questions that you have provided, students will first watch or read a key resource, and then they are the ones posting an intriguing question using some very specific sentence starters that I have provided in the instructions. The next part is that the group members, so this is a small group discussion, so the group members will address their questions that were presented or provided by the other members in the group. And they're going to be adding to an ongoing conversation within that questions thread. The final part is that the student who presented, or each student who presented an original question, which is every student in the group, they can then finally go back and read through the responses that were given or replied to on their original question. And then they're going to be able to summarize those presented answers through that ongoing conversation and reflect on how those new perspectives help them to determine their own understanding. So it's really helping students not only have a connection to the key resource and be invested in it, but it's also helping them put their thoughts on paper or on screen and go through a conversation and then take that conversation into account when it comes to their own thinking. I love this activity. So let me go through my template here. So I always have my unit question, right? You want to remind students what the overarching unit question is. I've given you language here for the goal, activity, or purpose. Anything in brackets, green, italicized is for you to edit, change, or accept, and then remove the green color and remove the brackets and remove the italicized font so that students can read it easier. The timeline here, this is like a 3-day activity because you want each phase or each part to be completed before they move into the next part. So if this is 3 days, let's say online, then the first day they consume the key resource. So that is an article or a podcast or a video. And then they compose their key question they're going to ask of the group. Day 2, they respond to each group member's question, adding to the ongoing conversation in that thread. And then day 3, they can go back to their original question that they posted, that thread, and then they get to review all of those responses, compose a summary of those responses and those answers, and then do a small reflection on how the new perspectives that were given to them by their teammates have altered their own understanding, or even prompted a new question for them. Okay, so this is not really about right and wrong answers. This is just about being able to observe student thinking and for you to actually see what topics and concepts are popping up naturally when they're discussing this key topic. All right, so here are the instructions I provided. Part 1, we're going to watch or read the key resource. This is where you can insert that link. It can be a PDF file that you've uploaded and add the link here, or link it out to an external website or video. Next, in part 1, they're going to compose that thought-provoking good question. Now, students are not going to be, in a place that they automatically know how to write a really good question, but this activity, as they do it over and over again with different resources, they're going to get better at creating good thought-provoking questions as they see how other questions are written and the interesting conversations that come of them. So here are some sentence starters I provided for students so they have at least a running start on how to write that thought-provoking good question. Okay, then they post their good question. So they work through the key resource, read it or watch it, create a question and post it. Part 2, or day 2, they're then going to go to each of their teammates' questions and being mindful of the replies that are posted before their own. So let's say 2 or 3 students have already replied to that question and they need to read through those replies, because this is not about just reading the question and giving a response of their own. Their job is to add to the conversation. And how they can do that is by using these sentence starters and using the little @ symbol, which is going to tag a student that they are referring to. So for example, they can add to a conversation by saying, I agree with John, @John, because blah, blah, blah. Or @Garrett, could you say that again? It was unclear to me. What I think you said was, okay, building on Kimberly's idea, I'd like to add what Mark just said to me, or what said reminds me of, blah, 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 and continued on. Giving them the bonus symbol here to use that @ symbol to tag a teammate that they are referring to, okay? Because their job is to contribute to the conversation, not ignore it. That's kind of a big part of this activity. All right, and I give them a little example here. Part 3, or day 3, they get to return to their original question, read through the replies to that question, and then they're going to give a final post, so they can just hit reply on that original question of theirs and compose 2 paragraphs. One paragraph is summarizing the provided answers, tips, and points. And then the second paragraph is a reflection of how their teammates' thinking helped them come to a conclusion or even raise another question for them. Okay, so this is all done in one Canvas discussion. Like I said, it's 3 parts. You could even do, you can decide which kind of part you could do in class, maybe this part, so you can really help them compose a really good question that's approved by you, and then they can post it and get started there. So this is the overall template. So now I want to give you a couple tips on how to successfully pull this into your class. The first thing that I want you to do before you import the template is enable the discussion redesign feature. So you're going to go in settings in your course. You're going to find at the top here, feature options. Then you're going to scroll down to where it says discussions, announcements, redesign. And if it doesn't have a green check mark, you just want to click on it and select enable. Okay. Now you want to go to comments and you can import that discussion into your class, and it's probably going to drop directly into your discussions here. Okay, so if you want to pull that into a module, then you want to just click on the module where you want it to go, select the plus button, use the drop down menu and find discussion, and then grab that discussion and add it to that module. Okay, now I want to give you a little tip when you are first teaching this activity. You might want to start this activity with content or a topic that's really light and fun. So like a fun video or just like a thought-provoking, interesting video that students can work through the parts or work through the steps using a lighter content, okay? So to do this, what I'm gonna recommend is you pull this into your class, use the triple dots on that activity and duplicate it. Okay, so if you duplicate it, you can use the top one for a practice. This is how this thinking routine goes. And then that way you can do the second one with the actual key resource for that unit. Okay, feel free to duplicate it multiple times if you want to use it in different weeks or different units. Okay, now moving into the next step, this is a small group activity. So you want to create your small groups after you have the template in, or at least have them ready to go when you have pulled the template in. So if you are unfamiliar with how to create student groups, you just go to People. So go to People and you have a tab that says Everyone in your class, and you have a tab that says Groups. So if I click on Groups, and if I don't have any created, I can create my first group set. You can name it like Leaderless Discussion, maybe Group Set 1, okay? Or maybe the name of the unit, so you know what groups this is for. And we're going to have students split into, we're actually going to select the second one here, split groups into groups with, I'm going to say no more than 4, 3 or 4, because remember, students have to address every single question that's in there, and more than 4 can get very cumbersome. So we're going to use the second one where it splits the total number of students in groups that only have 3 or 4 students. Okay. Now we do not need a group leader, right? Everyone's going to be accountable for each part. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay, groups are being created. Now I have this group set. All I need to do is apply this group set to my discussion. So I'm going to go back to modules here. Feel free to use the same group set for your practice or your initial leaderless discussion activity. And then they can be in the same group and know exactly what to expect of one another for the real deal. So in the redesign discussion forum, it may look a little different than normal. In order to edit this, your instructions here, just go to the triple dots in the top right corner and select edit. Then you'll go into the rich text editor, which looks very familiar to us. I'm going to scroll down here. You can see the settings that are already set. Users must post before they're seeing replies. It's graded, and I do allow liking here. And then I'm going to select, this is a group discussion, okay? And then here is where you select the group set. Add your possible points, add your weighted, how it's displayed, your weighted groups if you need it. When it's due, that would be day 3 that it's due. Make sure you give them a full 3 days to do it. When it's locked and when it's unlocked, and then you hit save and you're ready to go, okay? So the final piece that is optional, of course, is for you to add a rubric. Okay, so triple dots, click add rubric. That way students know very clear what's expected of them. All right, so this is the full leaderless discussion activity template. I want to know how you think that you could use this in your class. Okay, I'm very excited to see how this can be adapted for what you teach and for your students. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.